Since 2010, now there is the International Day of the Endangered Lawyer every 24th of January. You will hear a lot of all the other speakers about the specific situation of the focus country of that year, Iran, of the situation of lawyers there. So I don't want to focus on that, but I will give you some background information why it is so important that you are here, and I thank you specifically for joining this event and for informing you about what's going on with the world of lawyers and the endangered lawyers in that world. There is a effect of our work as lawyers in that world. If states don't deal with the rule of law as they should do, this brings up us lawyers on the scene. So we have to work and we have to represent our clients that are fighting for their rights and fighting for the rule of law. And this brings us in conflict to those states who don't respect the rule of law, but also sometimes even to private enterprises or single person who don't respect the rule of law and who follow their economical interests in a way that is against human rights. So lawyers can be an endangered species in countries where there is no rule of law. And this is one of the reasons why we have really frightening numbers worldwide of lawyers that are prosecuted, sometimes even killed, that lose their license only for doing their job. I may present you some numbers so that you have a real overview of what happens in this world. I was so happy just to get presented the new numbers of 2023. Thank you, Nathan, for doing this. And so I'm able to compare the numbers between 2022 and 2023 about the problems lawyers face simply in doing their job worldwide. The CCBE is writing letters to the heads of state in cases where lawyers got in trouble because of doing their work. In 2022 and in 2023, both of these years, CCBE sent 81 letters in support of those lawyers. But the numbers are quite different because in 2022, we sent 81 letters concerning cases of 150 endangered lawyers. And in 2023, it was concerning 360 lawyers. So it doubled more than. And this is a really worrying development. Those letters in 2022 covered 40 countries. In 2023, it covered 38 countries. We have what we could call the high count countries. These are the countries where between 5 and 10 letters are sent in 2022. It was China, Iran, Nigeria, Turkey. And in 2023, between 5 and 12 letters were sent to China, Iran, and Bangladesh and Belarus. So you can see that those are our focus countries with the biggest problems. But there is a lot more countries. As I told you, 40 countries had to be addressed in 2022 and 31 in 2023. So what kind of problems do lawyers get in? I also will compare the numbers we had between 2022 and 2023. In 2022, we had 6% murder, attempt murder, and death. And what is very much worrying me is that in 2023, also this number doubled. We have 30% of murder, attempt murder, and death. In 2022, we had 50% arrest, detention, prison, prosecution, torture. And this is 65% in 2023. In 2022, we had 40% threats, assault, harassment, ill treatment, travel ban, break-in, abduction. And this number is now 17% in 2023. And in 2022, we had 4% deprivation of the right to exercise the legal profession, an attack against the independence of the legal profession. In 2023, now it's 5%. So you see the world is a dangerous place also for lawyers. And but there is also one positive sentence I want to mention here. And this is, it is incredible in what way lawyers that are under risk worldwide continue their work. You will hear of my colleagues, for example, the story of Nasrin Sotoudeh. I was quite touched by her case because I had the honor as chair of the Human Rights Committee of the CCBE in 2019 to grant her in absence the Human Rights Award. and it was only one of several lawyers in Iran. And she was sentenced to 33 years of prisons and 148 strokes. So very inhuman treatment. And on international pressure, and also because of health reasons, she would release sometimes and then put back into prison. It's a long story. Some of my colleagues will mention that. But she's still continuing to do her work to defend women in that system. So I'm very, very proud of our profession, who faces such a lot of risk and still do their work, which is very important to represent the rule of law. I already talked too much because we have a lot of distinguished speakers here. And the first I may present is a United Nations Special Rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers. It's Margaret Satterthwaite. So I'm so happy that you made it, and thank you for joining, and I pass the word over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon and good morning. I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to the Coalition for the Endangered Lawyer for their crucial work in organizing this event and in organizing every year's commemoration of this event, and especially to bringing attention to the threats faced by human rights lawyers and by lawyers of every kind who are targeted solely for undertaking their professional duties. In a moment, you'll hear about the origins and purpose of the day, as well as the report, a very crucial and informative report prepared by the Coalition on the situation of lawyers in Iran. For my part, I wish to take this opportunity to commend lawyers in Iran for their brave commitment to the rule of law and their persistent efforts to exercise their profession independently and with integrity, despite enormous obstacles and pressures. These lawyers play an essential and irreplaceable role in upholding human rights. International law, in particular the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, guarantees the right to a fair trial, including legal assistance for those accused of criminal offenses. This is one of the most fundamental protections under law, and it protects individuals against the strength and the might of a state. In Iran, in the aftermath of the Women, Life, Freedom protests following the death in police custody of Gina Masha Amini in 2022, authorities arrested many thousands of individuals without warrants, held them in deplorable conditions, and sought the death penalty for some protesters. In numerous cases, the judiciary, and in particular judges of the Islamic Revolutionary Court, issued death sentences against protesters for their peaceful participation in these ongoing protests. Despite this manifest danger, many Iranian lawyers have provided or attempted to provide legal support to those protesters facing charges. Their efforts were met with obstacles at every turn, and many were themselves subjected to judicial harassment and imprisonment. At least 66 lawyers have been arrested and detained since September 2022, apparently in an attempt to both intimidate them and to prevent them from representing protesters. 11 of these lawyers have been sentenced and 47 have been released pending trial. The actions against lawyers breach numerous principles of international law. The UN Basic Principles on the Role of Lawyers provide important guidance to the steps that states must take to guarantee the free exercise of the legal profession and to ensure that rights, including those rights of the accused, are adequately safeguarded. Principle 16 of the Basic Principles provides that governments must ensure lawyers can perform their professional functions without intimidation, hindrance, attack, or harassment. And they should not be threatened with prosecution or administrative, economic, or other sanctions for any action taken in accordance with recognized professional duties, standards, and ethics. Principle 18 provides that lawyers shall not be identified with their clients or their clients' causes as a result of discharging their functions. And Principle 23 provides that lawyers, like other citizens, are entitled to freedom of expression, belief, association, and assembly. In flagrant violation of these principles, Iran has engaged in a long-standing pattern of conduct, which has only escalated since 2022 in which lawyers are subjected to prolonged pretrial detention, unfair trials based on vaguely worded or overly broad laws, lengthy prison sentences, ill treatment, denial of medical care, and prolonged solitary confinement merely for carrying out their duties as members of the legal profession or for conducting legitimate human rights advocacy. And yet lawyers in Iran have again and again risen to the challenge. For this, they have continued to suffer the consequences. I want to pay particular tribute to the courage of women lawyers and to those lawyers who have endured repeated arrest, detention, prosecution, imprisonment, and even torture, but who have continued their important work undaunted. You will hear more today about Nasreen Sotoudeh, who has faced multiple arrests and prison sentences, been banned from practicing law, and has been held in solitary confinement. The many punishments she has faced have been directly related to her duties as a lawyer, including her work representing women human rights defenders. Ms. Sotoudeh's actions and the actions of other lawyers like her demonstrate an incredible faith in the rule of law. I want to stress how remarkable it is that in the face of these obstacles, lawyers continue to do their work, fighting to get access to clients, to obtain evidence, to go into courtrooms, striving to make compelling defense arguments again and again, and endeavoring to play their role in the protection of rights. In doing so, they show their hope and conviction that the Iranian legal system can and should be a bastion against and not a perpetrator of violations of human rights. But what can be done to support these lawyers in their work? The coalition has prepared numerous valuable recommendations, which will be presented shortly. But before closing, I wish to focus on the role of independent lawyers associations in ensuring the free exercise of the legal profession. Principle 22 of the Basic Principles on the Role of Lawyers provides that lawyers shall be entitled to form and join self-governing professional associations to represent their interests, promote their continuing education and training, and protect their professional integrity. The executive body of the professional association shall be elected by its members and shall exercise its functions without external influence. The Bar Association is one of the oldest professional organizations in Iran, but the government has attacked the independence of this institution through structural changes, regulations, and investigations. Government interference with this organization must cease, and it should be permitted to resume its vital work of representing the interests of lawyers and protecting their professional integrity. Although Iranian lawyers face particular challenges, the situation in Iran is far from unique. In countries around the world, lawyers are targeted, defamed, attacked, imprisoned, and even killed. All of us must be alive to these risks in our own countries and elsewhere, and stand ready to offer our support to brave lawyers under threat. Thank you very much. I look forward to marking today's important event.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, Stefan, for your remarkable speech. And I would like to thank to everybody who are joining today's event, and I welcome you on behalf of the Coalition of Day of the Endangered Lawyer. I will not take a lot of time, but I just would like to remind our attendees that the meeting is recorded, and at the end of it, you will be able to ask questions, and please just raise your hand and also shortly introduce yourself to our question and answer section that you will see in your computer, and it would be amazing if you can also mention the press organization that you are representing. So now I would like to give the floor to Hans, but before doing this, I just want to introduce him. Hans Gaasbeek is a lawyer from the Netherlands who is practicing criminal and human rights law since 1976. He is one of the founders of the Day of the Endangered Lawyer, and also he's now representing the foundation of Day of the Endangered Lawyers. During his professional career, he initiated or he joined significant number of fact-finding missions, trial monitoring, or other human rights activities in many other countries, including Turkey, the Philippines, Kashmir, and many others. And he is a member of the European Democratic Lawyers and European Association of Democratic Lawyers for World's Human Rights and Democracy. I just would like to give the floor to Hans, who will explain us the background of the day, the necessity why we have such a day, why we are organizing these activities every single year. So please, Hans.
Yeah. Thank you very much for giving the opportunity to speak today here. Good afternoon, everybody. Together with my wife, Simone, I have a social lawyer office in the Netherlands, and I happened to start the Day of the Endangered Lawyer in 2010, after working for many years in the Commission Defense for the defense of the European Democratic Lawyers. Well, this was a kind of Amnesty International-like work, but you always were also behind the facts very much. And well, with the big support of the European Democratic Lawyers organization, we started in the first year in 2010 with the first day of the Endangered Lawyer in 6 European cities, which was already not too bad. And well, the idea was that we give much more structural attention to a very huge problem, which also was already designed by Stefan and also Margaret. With this day, we wanted really to have constant attention to a huge problem, which is not only it has not been less the problem. There's only more attacks on lawyers, as we heard, just in more countries. So, well, we are very happy that the Day of the Endangered Lawyer exists. Well, since 2010, you see our logo with the female and the male lawyer behind the bars, and we are very happy that in this logo we also see the female lawyer in a strong position, because we really are very impressed also by the female lawyers in many countries who have to do their work under very difficult circumstances. Well, after some years, also the coalition was created, and the coalition is, to explain easily, an informal big network of more than 35 international lawyer organizations, and it is informal, but it is anyway. It is a huge success because there's a lot of solidarity, cooperation between the lawyers from many countries nowadays, and we have a strong network. So this is the good news, you could say. We work on the basis of the UN Basic Principles on the Role of Lawyers, which were presented by Margaret. Well, the Day of the Endangered Lawyer Coalition is every year very active, and we support persecuted colleagues all over the world. And it is not only the colleagues we want to support, but it's also, we want to really defend the state of law. We want to defend the democratic values, and we want especially fight also for the independence of lawyers and judges, because they are really much under pressure. In the past 14 years, we have paid attention to so many cases in which lawyers have been suffering, and well, I can only pick up some very important cases, which is the very huge suppression of many lawyers and lawyers organizations in Turkey, and well, this is also a very sad file, because even Ebru Timtik was killed actually by a hunger strike, but because she was denied a fair trial. We have all seen at the trials in Turkey that this trial is not a real trial. This is absolutely unfair trial, the way trials are held against lawyers. Then we have the constant horrifying attacks on the Philippine lawyers, which even have doubled under President Duterte. But there's so many cases. We have the attack on the lawyers in Quetta, in Pakistan. And it is very cynical that the very first day of the Endangered Lawyer was already dedicated to the lawyers in Iran, which situation is terrible. And now, 14 years later, we again have to focus on the many hardships of the Iranian colleagues. On the other side, it's heartwarming to see that so many colleagues from all over the world, united in so many international lawyer organizations and bar associations, on the 24th of January, will stand up again for the human rights of the Iranian colleagues. And our goal is to reach worldwide attention for the deplorable situation of the Iranian colleagues, with whom we are in great solidarity. Our colleagues are detained inhumanely. They are detained many, many years. They are just doing their human rights lawyers' work seriously, and they are punished enormous. Next Wednesday, we will ask huge attention for this at many different manifestations, meetings, and ceremonies in many cities in many countries. And our joint international petition will be brought to many embassies of Iran. And in The Hague, we also asked to be invited. But like in 2010, our correspondence is not being answered at all. And I want to end to say that it's not only on the day, the 24th of January, that we ask attention for the Iranian colleagues and that we want to support them, but our support will go on through all the year, and our support also goes on with lawyers of countries which have been focused on in the last years. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hans, for all the work you initiated, and like we are all thankful, to have this coalition and to have this opportunity, like coming together and supporting each other. So now we will go on with Federico Cappelletti, who is a member of the Human Rights Committee of the European Criminal Bar Association. Most probably you all know the association, but it is an association of independent criminal defense lawyers in the Council of Europe, committed to promote the administration of justice, human rights, and the rule of law within the member states of the Council of Europe. Federico is almost daily in contact with our colleagues, with our brave colleagues who are still in Iran. So please, Federico.
Thank you, Ceren. Esteemed guests, dear colleagues, we are here today to give a voice to our Iranian colleagues who are threatened merely for carrying out their activities as lawyers. Their freedom and independence have been under threat for many years now. As a matter of fact, the Day of the Endangered Lawyer will be focused on the situation in Iran again this year and for the second time in the history of this event. The protests in Iran, which flared up September 2022, have once again revealed the establishment's idiosyncrasy towards fundamental rights and freedoms. As we have heard, thousands of protesters were arrested and sentenced following the closed-door and summary trials. The fact that among them were many journalists and lawyers clearly reveals the aim of silencing information and the lawyers who are those called upon to ensure the effectiveness of the right to defense. Not forgetting the constant discrimination and humiliation that women are experiencing in defiance of the principle of civilization enshrined in the Article 1 of the Declaration of Human Rights, which Iran also ratified, according to which all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, where dignity comes even before rights. The freedoms of thought, conscience, religion, expression, assembly, and association, which are the cornerstones of a civil life, constantly challenged in the name of religious obscurantism, as well as the right to life, stubbornly denied through the worldwide sad record of 878 executions in 2023, and the rights to liberty, fair trial, and not to be prosecuted for merely defending them, should always find lawyers in the front line. The conditional, however, is a must, since, as the report of the Coalition for the Endangered Lawyers clearly shows, the legal profession in the Islamic Republic of Iran is not independent in spite of the international principles to which Iran also formally commits itself. In the midst of all these obstacles, there are those colleagues who, honoring the robes they wear, bravely put their freedom, their work, and their affections at risk every day in the name of justice and fundamental rights. Among those who must suffer judicial reprisals with extremely heavy sentences, including corporal punishment, there is Nasrin Sotoudeh. She has been arrested and later released on bail as late as November last year, and she is the epitome of the endangered lawyer in the world. As a coalition, we issued a call to action to the international and European high representatives with a request of urgent and effective intervention in her favor. And as she recently emphasized, the support of this coalition and its members' organizations turned the difficult and exhausting conditions she was living together with her family into their daily challenge and gave them hope to continue the journey towards the temptation of justice. In the last 20 months, 162 lawyers have been tried and persecuted in Iran. They have been sued, imprisoned, or sentenced. 3 of them have been killed, and 3 of them had their lawyers' licenses revoked in addition to imprisonment, which is the same as being ousted from society, since you no longer have any means to provide for yourself and your family. A functioning, active, and influential society is then at risk. But can it stop working because of these risks? To understand why independent lawyers continue to work in Iran, we have to ask this question in reverse. If these independent lawyers did not work in a society like Iran, what would happen and what would be the daily life of citizens and activists? Well, I believe together with Nasrin that if lawyers also shirk their human and professional responsibility towards justice, the prospect of the daily life would become even more bitter, and there would be no trace of the profession and dignity of lawyers. Therefore, they continue to work defending human rights because they are aware that in spite of everything, their activity contributes to creating some justice in their country. They see themselves as the guardians of justice in a difficult situation, right or wrong. Nasrin Sotoudeh, as well as all other persecuted lawyers in Iran, need us to stand up for them. These remind us of the importance of solidarity to preserve and reinforce the values of freedom and independence of the legal profession and lead all of us to support their cause. because those who remain silent or even worse, complacent, inexorably play into the hands of the tyrant of the day who, fearing truth and dissent, crushes them. With this initiative, we urge then each one of us, journalists, lawyers, representatives of the international organizations, members of the civil society, to offer, as far as we are able and available, our contribution to give a voice to our voiceless colleagues and human rights defenders in Iran and worldwide. We believe this is the best way to turn the spotlight on those who have gone and are still going as far as to sacrifice their private lives, their freedom, and even their own lives to defend fundamental rights and ensure a better future for all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Federico. And now we will go on with sharing the findings of our reports. So for this one, I will just give the floor to Debra Long. Debra is the International Policy Manager for Rule of Law and Human Rights at the Law Society of England and Wales. And in this role, she runs the Lawyers at Risk program, which provides support to lawyers around the world who face human rights violations because of their professional work. The program also promotes the independence of the legal profession and access to justice. And now she will summarize the findings of the report that the coalition has already published about the situation of lawyers in Iran. Please, Debra.
Thank you. Yes, as we've heard, Iran was chosen as the focus country because of grave concerns of systemic human rights violations. And as we've heard as well, this includes widespread intimidation and prosecution of lawyers. The Coalition for the Day of the Endangered Lawyer has put together a report detailing the very long history of interference with the independence of the legal profession and direct targeting of lawyers in Iran. The report details how Iranian law undermines the independence of the legal profession through restrictive procedures such as preventing the issuance of lawyers' licenses to practice and allowing the government to conduct background checks on lawyers who stand as candidates for the Iranian Bar Association. The control of the supreme leader over the judiciary and the appointment process for judges also contravenes international law, as well as impacting the ability of lawyers to provide legal services. The Iranian Code of Criminal Practice restricts the rights of persons accused of crimes and the ability to prepare a defense. For example, it restricts the right to have a lawyer of one's choice, as well as the right to have adequate time to consult with the lawyer. These restrictions apply even to those facing the most serious punishments, such as the death penalty. In practice, there are also interferences with the established principle of lawyer-client confidentiality, which further undermines the rights of accused persons, as well as the ability of lawyers to represent them effectively. Now, the pressure on lawyers and human rights defenders has intensified since the nationwide protests triggered by the death of Mahsa Amini in September 2022. The coalition's report highlights that following these protests, subsequent crackdowns have seen in the region of 23,000 protesters arrested and in the region of 600 people killed by security forces. Some individuals, as we've heard, have been executed following unfair trials based on forced confessions. The revolutionary courts of first instance have issued almost 100 protest-related death sentences, while many other individuals are facing charges that could result in the application of the death penalty. The charges against the protesters are grounded on vaguely defined national security issues, and the trial proceedings lack adherence to fair trial guarantees and due process of law. As my colleagues have mentioned, many lawyers defending protesters, as well as other individuals in Iran, face threats, harassment, arbitrary arrest, and detention. The coalition's report includes numerous case studies to illustrate the actions that have been taken against lawyers in Iran. And now Nazanin Sotoudeh has been mentioned, is a prominent human rights lawyer in Iran and as we've heard, one of the recipients of the Council of Bars and Law Societies of Europe's Human Rights Award in 2019. And that's just one of many awards she has received in recognition of her work. I wanted to just give a little bit more detail as to Nazarin's work and also why she's being targeted. So she's been a very vocal critic of Iran's judicial process, speaking out about the treatment of women and against the death penalty. As a lawyer, she has represented many individuals, including the Nobel Prize winner Shirin Ebadi. She also was part of the Iranian Women's Coalition, which demanded gender equality in law before the 2009 presidential election. As a result of her work, she has faced decades of intimidation and human rights violations. She has been arrested and imprisoned on multiple occasions. Her husband has also been targeted and has faced arrest and detention. Now, most recently, on the 29th of October 2023, Nazarin was arrested while attending the funeral of Amita Garavand, a 16-year-old girl who had died after being in a coma for 28 days, following a violent incident with the morality police in the Tehran metro. The reports indicate that Nazarin was severely beaten during and after her arrest and was also subjected to humiliating treatment. In protest against her arrest and detention, she went on hunger and medicine strike. Now, she was subsequently released from prison on the 15th of November 2023. However, her trial is still ongoing. Now, another case study that's highlighted in the report is of Mohammed Najafi. He's another award-winning lawyer who's faced repeated arrests and harsh sentences and ill treatment whilst in detention because of his work in human rights advocacy. For instance, in 2018, he was arrested for challenging the official report on the death of one of his clients whilst in custody. He was subjected and subsequently charged with multiple national security offences, including organising with the intention to disturb national security, propaganda against the state, and insulting the supreme leader. During his detention and trial, he was denied access to a lawyer of his choosing. Mr. Najafi's lawyer stated that he could not represent his client because he was not included in the list of lawyers authorised by the judiciary. He was subsequently released on bail, but was arrested several months later and sentenced to 14 years in prison for disturbing public opinion. In December 2019, he was sentenced to a further 3 years for agitating public consciousness. At the beginning of 2023, he went on hunger strike in protest against his treatment and unfair trial. However, in April 2023, he was sentenced to a further 3 years and had to pay a fine for a legal case that was opened against him while he was in prison. Now, these cases and others included in the coalition report are representative of the many hundreds of lawyers who face daily challenges and risks in Iran while carrying out their professional duties. However, it's impossible to know the total number of imprisoned lawyers in Iran due to a lack of transparency. The frequent violations of the right of access to information, as well as attacks on the independence of bar associations, prevents us from really knowing exactly how many of our colleagues in Iran are in prison. Furthermore, following the protests in 2022, the chief of the judiciary, alongside government security entities, such as the Ministry of Intelligence and the intelligence faction of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, have been authorized to thoroughly scrutinize the various legal associations throughout the nation, a move which threatens to further undermine the independence of the legal profession and increase intimidation of lawyers. For example, the government is investigating the Iranian Bar Association and will evaluate the judicial credentials of lawyers affiliated with the bar. This intervention allows the state to designate which lawyers are entitled to practice in Iran. Now, the use of such intimidation tactics by the government undermines the independence of the legal profession and is targeting lawyers simply because of their legal work. This targeting of lawyers also has a chilling effect on human rights and rule of law. It has fostered a climate of fear and insecurity for lawyers. Naturally, lawyers are fearful when performing their legal duties and offering legal services to clients or speaking out about human rights violations which of course further limits access to justice for individuals. Now, for these reasons, the Coalition for the Day of the Endangered Lawyer has made a range of demands and recommendations in the report to the Iranian authorities to address these concerns. And I will hand back so that we can hear some of those demands and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Debra. And now we will go on with Susan Kohlmann. Susan is the president of the New York City Bar Association and the litigator at Ceren Blog LLP. Founded in 1870, the City Bar is an organization of 23,000 members in New York City and throughout the United States and in more than 50 countries around the globe. Its members include judges, prosecutors, defense counsel, government lawyers, and public interest non-governmental organization practitioners, as well as legal academics and attorneys representing major law firms and corporations in the United States. And the City Bar has a long and distinguished history of promoting the rule of law and human rights, including the rights of legal professionals to fulfill their professional obligations. And now Susan will summarize the recommendations that the coalition made jointly about the situation in Iran. Please, Susan.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the New York City Bar and its task force on the independence of lawyers and judges, we are so delighted to be here today and continue our collaboration with the other members of the International Coalition for the International Day of the Endangered Lawyer. The New York City Bar was the first bar association in the United States to officially mark the International Day of the Endangered Lawyer. We have also had the great honor of hosting the Special Rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers, Margaret Satterthwaite, in New York. And this year, as you have heard, on the Day of the Endangered Lawyer 2024, we turn our attention to the lawyers at risk in Iran, with whom we stand in solidarity. Critically important to the work of the International Coalition is taking action. And it is to that end that I want to highlight for you the important recommendations embraced by the coalition and directed to the authorities. Lawyers cannot serve as the guardians of justice for all without special protections for the profession. The 15 recommendations of the coalition largely track the UN Basic Principles on the Role of Lawyers and can be found at pages 40 to 42 of the report. I will not read them today, but I want to highlight some of the key actions the coalition calls on the government of Iran to take. First and foremost, lawyers in Iran must fulfill their professional duties without fear of intimidation or interference of any kind. Any existing proceedings against lawyers in connection with the performance of their professional duties must be terminated, and all lawyers imprisoned for fulfilling their professional duties must be released. Authorities must ensure the safety of lawyers in Iran when they are threatened, seemingly solely for discharging their professional duties. Lawyers must not be identified with their clients' positions or their clients' causes in the course of carrying out their duties as lawyers. In other words, clients' positions and causes must not be attributed to their lawyers. But lawyers must be free to represent their clients by making statements before legal and administrative authorities. The government must not make those statements actionable. Lawyers abide by codes of conduct developed by the legal profession or by legislation. When lawyers are disciplined, those proceedings must be independent. We call on the authorities to ensure that all proceedings against lawyers in Iran be impartial and independent and subject to independent judicial review without government interference. As the UN Basic Principles recognize, bar associations like the New York City Bar and those represented here today play an essential role in protecting against persecution and restriction on lawyers' ability to function as lawyers. Lawyers must be able to join or form these professional organizations without restriction. Just as the UN Basic Principles provide, lawyers in Iran should have the right to form and join self-governing professional organizations in Iran. Bar associations help ensure that all Iranians have effective and equal access to legal services and that lawyers are able to represent their clients without interference. Indeed, the international coalition's call on the government in Iran to cease the kinds of acts of lawyer persecution you have heard described here is proof of the power of professional associations. Access to justice is critical for all people, no matter who or where they are. Individuals must be able to access lawyers and legal services of their own choosing, and no court or administrative authority shall be permitted to refuse to recognize the right of a lawyer to appear before it for his or her client. Finally, considering the dire plight of lawyers in Iran today, as you have heard so well described by my colleagues, the international coalition strongly urges that the authorities accept an official visit of the UN Special Rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers for an independent, on-the-ground assessment of the state of the legal profession and the justice system in Iran today, and their compliance with all applicable international standards. Again, lawyers are charged with being the guardians of justice, upholding the rule of law, protecting individual rights, fighting to make communities fair and equal. The mistreatment of lawyers and the erosion of an independent legal profession cannot be tolerated, nor can the international community stand by and watch access to justice be blocked time and time again. As you have seen today, the international coalition is deeply committed to continuing its work and will continue to support lawyers at risk in Iran and around the globe, wherever they are. To the Iranian authorities, we say, the eyes of the world are upon you. Zan, Zendegi, Azadi. Women, life, freedom.
Dear Susan, thank you very much for this strong closing remarks. I did not receive any questions, but we still have 10 minutes. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and I will give you the floor. But in the meantime, I would like to say that as a person, as a lawyer who comes from Turkey, you know, Turkey was the chosen country twice before. I know the importance of the coalition, and all the lawyers in Turkey, they know the importance of this coalition and its work. And we also know that like supporting lawyers means supporting the human rights, supporting the rule of law, supporting the independence of judiciary, right to defense. Like, so we are not just supporting lawyers, we are trying to support people who needs lawyers also. So this week will be our week of action. And we are very proud to announce that there will be a lot of different actions around the globe, like with different forms. There will be conferences, there will be demonstrations, there will be solidarity statements, etc. And we are again very proud to announce that there will be actions in the Philippines. There will be actions in several cities of Turkey, several cities of Italy, in the UK, in the United States, Berlin, Hamburg, etc. So we know that our work is becoming broader day by day, every year, and we will go on doing this because we know that the world will be a better place if we can go on with our solidarity and if we can go on with our actions. We will share a second report with you in a couple of weeks whenever we finalize this week. With the report will include all the action points. So since I didn't receive any question, okay, I received one question. There is one question which says that any suggestions for local events about the Day of Endangered Lawyers? And another question is, this is the second year that Iran has been the focus of the Day of the Endangered Lawyer. Are conditions worse now than before? And also Sarah is asking any suggestions for further support from us. You know, like, I will direct the second question to Stefan or Hans. Maybe you can make a comparison between the first year and this year, the conditions, Hans, because, like, do you think that the situation in Iran is worse than before now? Or any other speakers, if you would like to take the floor.
Hans, do you want to say something to that, or?
Yes, please.
Well, the very first day when we focused on Iran, it was really a little project, and on the other hand, it was already big because it was in 6 European cities. But the situation has deteriorated very much in Iran, and there are much more lawyers under pressure, and there have been so many human rights violations of the lawyers who try to defend their clients in their human rights cases. So it is very necessary, but it is a choice of our coalition, and in our coalition we can always propose a country, and if you propose it well and well documented, then the country can be chosen. But there's too many countries and too many lawyers in danger to make good choices. So there's always also disadvantages to a choice, because then you cannot work for other lawyers. So
maybe I want to add something. So I have a very small figure that maybe not so relevant for you, but still comparing the letters the CCBE was writing, but I must still say that we cannot cover any lawyer that has problems in his works in Iran. So we select specific, very severe cases. And in 2022, we had written 5 letters to Iran, and we had written 8 letters in 2023. So a higher number of that. But I want to also mention that my impression when it comes to the situation in Iran, that there is, especially in the last year, there's much more international observation of the situation in Iran due to the things that happened, the uprisings we had. So there's more awareness on the specific human rights situation in Iran. But this is in some way goes in 2 directions. One is there's more awareness, and maybe there is better chances to make better development on the one hand side. And on the other hand, I have the impression that the regime is really realizing that, and even the pressure is getting higher, specifically on lawyers, because they saw that, you know, the lawyers movement also in Iran can produce such international attention, which is dangerous for the actual regime. So I think we have this 2-sided effect there in the latest developments in the last year.
Thank you, Stefan. And any other speakers who would like to say something about the questions? Please, Debra, please.
Yes, just directly on that question, just to highlight maybe that in the report at the beginning, there's a very interesting, if somewhat disturbing, history of the situation of lawyers in Iran, which also indicates that there were at times perhaps a more optimistic approach, but then we've seen subsequent where there was perhaps hope for kind of more independent Iranian Bar Association and others, but then we've seen certainly a sort of worsening of the situation again. So I think it gives quite a good history and background to the context within which lawyers are working, and now a kind of the sort of orchestrated targeting of lawyers that we've been seeing in very recent years. So just also to direct people to the report as well, which might be useful background reading.
Thank you, Debra. I see that we have some other questions that are going to the same direction, I should say. Like some of our attendees are questioning whether we will submit the report to the Iranian bodies, embassies, or other authorities, or and they're also asking whether we are expecting any reaction from the Iranian authorities. I will answer the first part. Yes, of course, we will submit our report and the petition. We will send it to the authorities. We always do it every year for every single country. And anybody who would like to answer the second part of the question, whether we are expecting any reaction from the authorities, please take the floor. And this will be the last question, unfortunately, because we have only 4 minutes. So, yeah.
Maybe I wanna try to give an answer on that last question. I'm not really sure if we get a rejection, but I get this question very often when it comes to the CCBE letters that Nathan and I create, and the president of the CCBE then writes to the head of state. And some people just always ask me, why do you do all that work and write such a lot of letters to head of state, and you normally don't? Sometimes we get answered, but in most of the case we don't get answered. Why do you do that? So what's that good for? And I think I want to present this view on me. My very simple and short answer on that is, if we don't write the letters, it doesn't get better. So that's and if you ask people and lawyers under danger in different countries, you always get the answer: we need international awareness. This is the most specific point, even though sometimes we are really worried if our letters, for example, or any kind of actions like also the CCBE Human Rights Award may put people under risk. And so we ask them before we write the letters if we are able to. And I never got the answer, I would say, only in very rare cases, that those lawyers who were under threat said, no, please don't write the letter, I feel under risk. And this is incredible, because they're really brave people, but they want this international awareness. And it's also very important that the report, for example, will also be shared at our EU partners on European level. And there are a lot of organizations working on that topic. So it's also very important to give them the information, what's going on in the country. And so I think for this reason, there is no alternative to do what we do, even though we maybe not get the reaction. But still, internally, there may be reactions. No country, no government is just a one-man show. There are different people there. And some of them may be a bit more open-minded, and some of them will get a bit more worried about that. And if this happens, this is always something that happens. So I think it's a very good thing to do. And I also want to use this occasion to really thank everybody who was part of this, and to really thank the coalition. You do an incredible, important work, and I'm very glad to be a small part of this. And thank you so much for giving your time for this very important project. Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree fully with Stefan. And maybe to add some information for this question, when we give the petition to the embassy, we also give the report. So many embassies will receive the report, and they will have to send it to the government. And that is one side of the thing. But the other side is that we also address ourselves to international institutions, to other countries. They will also be aware of our International Day of the Endangered Lawyer, and they will also be aware of the very well written report. That's what we hope.
Thank you, Hans. On behalf of the coalition, I once again want to thank you all for joining us. Firstly, of course, I thank to our speakers and also all the attendees who are with us today, all the members of the coalition who worked very hard this year to make the day possible once again. And as I said before, we will share a second report with you that will highlight the activities around the day. And it is quite important for everybody, like we're encouraging everybody to circulate the report, to submit it to the authorities that they think it is relevant to be submitted. And yeah, once again, thank you all. Good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ceren, for organizing this very important event. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you, Nathan,
commitment.
for
Thank
all
you,
the support.
Ceren.
Yeah.
Thank you for your great organization, Ceren. Fantastic.
Yeah, same for me. Thank you. And goodbye. See you all.
Bye.